Whoa. Horace, don't you go out there and run off. Boom! What's going on, everybody, and welcome back to the channel. Alrighty, in today's video we're going to be checking out a 100 amp hour battery, and there's Gary the Gnat. We're going to be checking out a 100 amp hour battery from OP Solar. Before we get too far into this video, I'm just going to say the video is probably going to be really long. It's going to be a full review, and that means just we're going to test everything out on this battery that we possibly can. Having said that, there's going to be chapters down in the timeline so you can skip around if you want to. All right? Let's get to it. First things first is I'm going to go over some of the specs and prices and all that kind of stuff. Some of it might be a little geeky and some of it might not. Anyway, I'm going to read straight from the paper here so I don't mess it up. All right, so this is a 5.12 kilowatt hour Powerwall style battery. Powerwall basically means you can hang it on the wall. So this is a 48 volt 100 amp hour lithium iron phosphate battery. The price on this battery is $1,699 plus $200 shipping. That's whether you get one battery or 6 batteries. That is $331 per kilowatt hour. However, from the 25th of October to the 5th of November, they're having a sale price. Sale price is $1,580 with free shipping. That's basically $320 off, which bring it to $308 per kilowatt hour. Not too bad in my opinion. The free shipping is in the United States only, by the way. But one of the good things about these guys is they actually ship pretty much all over the world. Alrighty, moving on. They have a 10-year warranty. You can cycle them over 7,000 times, and that's 80% DOD. Maintenance free, smart BMS, communication with many popular brand inverters, and you can parallel these batteries together, of course. Some of the other geeky tech specs would be recommended charge current of 20 amps, maximum charge current of 100 amps, maximum continuous discharge current of 100 amps. It's got 6 different temperature sensors in there, and it has the high and low temperature disconnect, which we're going to test those, by the way. All right, that's enough of that stuff. Let's take a look at the battery. All right, packaging looks absolutely fantastic, full of foam, and then right here on top it looks like we have a couple of brackets, and right below that is the battery. Come on out of there. And this foam actually just comes right off the top. I didn't try that a minute ago. We got our user manual. We have an inspection report, which we'll take a look at here in just a second. And then we have an Ethernet cable. It is looking pretty darn nice if you ask me. All right, first things first is we're gonna measure this beast, and we're gonna go all the way down to these handles right here. So from the top all the way down to the bottom of the handle is about 24¼ inches, 16½ inches wide. And then from the table to the top of the battery is exactly 8 inches. And this thing weighs 110 pounds. Here right on the top, obviously you can see the battery is Orient power. It's got a little black stripy thing right on the front. And then we have the little screen here. We've got a menu button, enter button, down button, and escape. We have a little capacity meter here, alarm, and run. And there's a power button to turn this on, which is on the bottom, which we'll go to next. On the bottom, we have 2 little handles here. You could either pick it up, or this is kind of like a guard. It's pretty thick and nice and strong. We have the positive and negative terminals. We have a power button that does not light up. That's okay, doesn't need to. Over here on the bottom left, we have the circuit breaker, and this is Chint brand, and it's 125 amps. We have an on and off LED indicator, ADS switches or dip switches, and this is if you have a bunch of batteries that you want to hook up in parallel. This is how you'll assign them, by going up and down through all of these. And if you look at the manual, it'll tell you exactly which ones to go up and down. After that, we have the dry contacts, and then right after that, we have the RS-45A and CAN ports. This is for connecting to inverters. Some inverters take a RS-45 and some take CAN. After that, we have the RS-232 port, and this is for connecting the battery to a computer. For example, if you wanted to connect this to a specific inverter and you needed to change the protocol, basically you just hook up to this port, open up the software on the computer, and then change it from there. Or if you just wanted to monitor it from a computer, you could do that. And finally, we have some other RS-485 ports. This is like a B and a C port, and these ones are used when you have a bunch of batteries to connect into parallel. This is their communication port to the next battery. I don't think it matters which port you hook these up to. Let's see. On each side, we do have a lifting handle, and it's nice and strong, and it's spring-loaded, so it wants to go back all by itself. You got one on each side, and then you got the sticker right here, which has the model number 48100PW. Rated voltage is 51.2 volts, capacity 100 amp hours, and the energy is 5,120 watt hours. And yes, this is a little wrinkled right here. I did that when I was lifting it up on the table, so my bad. On the bottom here, let me lift it up. Oh, that's pretty heavy. Back of the battery, you have these really thick mounting brackets that are welded to the case pretty much everywhere. And this is the bracket that you would mount to the wall. Same thing, it's really thick metal. It's got a bunch of holes for you to put the anchor bolts in, and you would mount this to the wall, and then you would lift the battery up and set her right on there. And that's a pretty solid setup. Some of the other things that came in the box obviously is the mounting bracket that goes on the wall. We have the manual, which I would suggest reading because it gives you all the information of how to hook everything up and pretty much everything else that you would want to know. It's actually pretty detailed. You should definitely take a look. And it came with a battery inspection report. All right, looks like their last capacity was 104.4, which we will be testing. This is like a QA report. Everything works. It came with all the sleeve anchor bolts, so you can mount it right on the wall. And it also came with the red and black battery wire covers. All right, 2 red and 2 black. And then it also came with 4 of the bolts, which have a flat washer and a lock washer on there. So that's nice. And mine also came with a Ethernet cable. All right, so before we charge this up and do a capacity test and all that kind of fun stuff, I did want to pull off the cover here so we can take a look inside. And to pull off the cover, it looks like there's 3 screws on each side, and then there's 2 on the top and bottom. All right, so inside the battery, we've got a bus bar that connects both positives, a bus bar that connects both negatives. We do have double wires on the positive and the negative. And if we can see it here, I don't know if it'll show up on camera or not, but it says 7 AWG and it's rated for 200C. So this is the silicone wire, you know, the real flexible stuff. I'm just going to grab everything and make sure everything's nice and tight. Got the circuit breaker down here a little bit farther. I'm pushing on those terminals. Right in the middle, we got the BMS. I don't really know much about these BMSs, but I will try to get a part number in camera view for you. All right, so anyway, if we follow the wires, we got the double wires off the positive, go down into the circuit breaker right down there, come out of the circuit breaker, and then go right to battery positive. All right, so negative, if we follow those wires around, it goes into the BMS down here at the bottom, and then exits right here on the top, and goes underneath this plate. There's nice cable management. They have the little wrap on all the wires. I don't know, everything in here looks really good to me. So I think what we'll do here is we'll take off this cover so we can take a look at those cells real quick. On the bottom side of this cover, there is this foam matting stuff for insulation, so that's good. Boom! There we go. We have access to the cells. And I guess you could technically say this is a serviceable battery since all the batteries have bolts and bus bars that are removable. Looks like we have battery positive here, and we just kind of snake around this way, go over to this bus bar, and then snake our way back down to the negative right here. These are nice and tight. I don't see anything wrong with those. All the balance wires are neatly zip tied. I do see a QR code on every single battery, which will be a little tricky for you guys to see. So I'll just take a picture and put it right up on the screen for you. 4 temperature sensors right up here on top. They're in between the cells to a point. I can see foam in between all the cells, so they are separated. and there is foam going all the way around on the outside edge, so nothing is touching. The brace that goes across the top has a hole in each one just in case there was a venting cell. It can vent freely. These braces do have foam underneath, so there's no metal touching any cells anywhere. Yeah, I'm not seeing anything wrong up here, you guys. If you guys see something that I'm not seeing, definitely put those down in the comment section. I'm going to put both covers back on. We will charge it up and then we will do a capacity test. But we'll probably go through the menu on the screen first before we do that. So give me 1 second and I will be right back. All right, so we're going to turn the battery on and kind of see what shows up on the screen. So I'm going to push the power button right over here. All right, so battery's powered on. We have 3 LEDs on here for our capacity, so we're roughly 3/4 full. We have a run blinky light here, and of course alarm is not on. So if we press the menu key, we have BMS status, parameter settings, system settings. Press the down button, we can see what else we got in there. That's pretty much it. All right, so we'll go to BMS status, press enter. Well, we're idle right now. If we go into the record, that'll tell us basically a record of the battery. And they do test the battery, of course, before they send it, and that is part of that battery inspection report, like I said before, basically to make sure everything works. So I would imagine in here, we might have a record of something. So UVP, which is under voltage protection. So the battery did shut off at one point, or at least the BMS shut it off. And we have an over voltage protection of 1, so that's good. All right, so let me back out of here and we'll go to BMS status. So this is just the status of the battery. Basically, if there's any warnings or anything like that, everything should be no. Yeah, everything's sitting at a no right now because we're basically just sitting here doing nothing. All right, go back to the main screen. We'll go down to parameter settings, which we can't access on the screen here. We have to hook up to a computer. System settings. This is for the computer when you hook it up, and it's set to a baud rate of 9600. All right, analog info. In here we have the pack voltage of 52.7. Amps is nothing, obviously, because we're not doing anything. Temperature, cell voltage, and cell capacity. So let me go back up. We'll start with temperature. The 4 temperature sensors on the batteries are roughly 19.1 to 19.3, 20.3, and 21.2 on the environmental and on the PCB. We'll back out. Go to cell voltage if you guys want to see those. They're all sitting at 3.294 and 3.295 and 3.393. So all within a 20 millivolt spread there. Go to cell capacity. So here's our state of charge. We're at 54.56%, and you can see the last capacity test was 104.4 amp hours, and that's what they wrote right here on this sheet. We can't really go anywhere from here. So all right, there we go. All right, let me hook this up to a charger. We'll get it charged up and we'll do a capacity test. All right, this is going to be a horrible picture, but I was going to go over to the OP Solar Battery website. That's the website for the battery here, and I was going to download the software to put on the computer, and then we're going to hook up the computer to the battery while it's charging. It's opsolarbattery.com. So I'm just going over to products, and then I'm going to go over to the battery itself, and then we're going to go down right down here to the BMS software. All right, and we're going to just download that, and once that's downloaded, PBMS tools, we're going to open that up. All right, now that the software is running, we're going to need the communication cable. Basically, it's a USB to the RS-232. We're going to plug that into the USB port, wherever that's at. And we're going to go right to the RS-232 port on the battery. Oh, I had to wait for the driver to install. Now that the driver is installed, we can hit try connect. Boom, there you go. All right, so what we have on this screen is your pack voltage, your pack current, state of charge, state of health, remaining capacity, and full capacity right over here. So we're at 53.6 volts. We're currently charging at 9.89 amps from my little charger over there. To the right of that, we have those 4 temperature sensors that are on top of the cells, and right below that are those other 2 temperature sensors, I'm guessing environmental and one on the BMS. And right below that, we have the cell voltages of all 16 cells. And then right above that, we actually have the high and low cell, which is kind of jumping around right now. And then right over here on the right is the difference between the high and low cell. So we're sitting roughly 8 millivolts difference right now. And again, that's going to jump around just as these are jumping around. So there you go. All right, it is the very next day. Time now is 10:43 a.m. I let the battery charge at 10 amps or a little under that, and this is what I've got the very next day. So we're sitting at 54.843 volts. We're not charging anymore or anything like that. Technically, we're full charge. I just hit close so I could try to get it to charge more, but cell number 15 keeps overvolting, and that's basically because we're out of balance right now. And this is pretty normal, in my opinion, for a brand new battery. Is, yeah, sure, you want it to be balanced whenever you first get it, but typically, you know, they're not. So right now, the difference is 322 millivolts, you know, from the highest cell down to the lowest cell. This first test is going to be a 0.2C discharge or 20 amp discharge, and we're going to be using a 48 volt APC UPS for my inverter, and we're going to be discharging with a 150 watt light bulb, and then this heater right here, which should give us roughly 20 amps. Hey buddy, don't touch any wires, okay? Just don't do anything, okay? Just stay there. Because I got all these wires right here. Don't touch anything. Let me turn this up just a little bit more, see if we can get some more balance out of here. Probably won't be able to. Cell number 15 is at 3.7 volts. I know you can't really see it on there, but... Alright, so I just missed it. We just hit the high cell over voltage, so the BMS cut the charging circuit, and you can see that right there. It's on open. So that's basically because cell number 15 went up to roughly 3.7 volts, which is fine. Again, this is the very first charge, and you know, it's to be expected. All right, we got the software on the computer, so we can do a little bit of monitoring there. I've got the BOOM shunt hooked up. There's the BOOM shunt hooked right up to the negative battery terminal, and then the other wires go through over here and go into the 48 volt UPS that we're going to be using for an inverter. BOOM shunt reads after the BMS. This reads at the BMS, so this is going to be a little bit more accurate. Capacity test number 1 starts now. We're going to turn on the UPS, turn on the light bulb, and the heater. There we go. 19.4 here. That's a little bit different up there, so roughly 20 amps. And again, if you're not familiar with these kind of tests, as the voltage of the battery drops, the amps are going to raise just slightly. So this is about as close as we can get to a 0.2C capacity test.
Later, in the void.
We're getting real close here, so I'm going to run over some of the numbers. So right now the pack is 45.5 volts. We're drawing 22 amps. State of charge is 3%, remaining capacity of 2880. All right, and then over here we got the highest and lowest cell. Highest is 2.85, lowest is 2.814. Our delta is 40 millivolts. All right, so we're looking pretty good here. Over here on the BOOM shunt, we have consumed 5.1 kilowatt hour, so we're doing real good over there. So now we're getting a few more alarms over here. The pack under voltage, cell under voltage, and state of charge is low. So we're about there. See what we got on history over here. We're at 100 amp hours. This is showing 100 amp hours. We've actually consumed 102 amp hours according to the numbers right up here. There it goes. All right, first test, according to the BOOM shunt, we got 5.1 kilowatt hour and 100 amp hour. And according to the battery BMS, the software, we did make the 100 amp hour mark, which that's what this battery is rated for. Their last capacity test was 104 according to that sheet earlier. So far first test is doing pretty good. I'm gonna go ahead and recharge the battery and then we will test it again. All right, so it's the very next day and I just let it charge overnight and we're sitting at 55.26 volts. Our actual capacity on that last discharge test was 103.080 amp hours. So we're over the 100 amp hour mark that they are claiming. I guess the only bad thing still at this point is we're not completely balanced. Our cell delta is 314 millivolts, so high and low cell is 15 and number 9. All right, so we are getting ready to do the next discharge test and we are gonna be doing a 0.5C or real close to that. And the only thing I'm basically doing is adding another heater. Time now is 10:56 a.m. So let me turn on the UPS. I'm going to be turning on 2 heaters and 1 150 watt light bulb. So here we go. All right, so we're drawing almost 48 amps, so this is almost a 0.5C discharge test. And like I said before, as the voltage on the battery drops, the amps are going to go up. This test should last roughly about 2 hours, so I will see you then.
Later.
All right, so we're a little over halfway through the 0.5C discharge test. We're at 51 volts. We're at 48, almost 49 amps. State of charge is 45%. Main reason for this little update, I just wanted to show you the temperatures and all that kind of stuff, and we're all looking pretty darn good. I guess the only thing that is a little sus right now is the UPS that I'm using for the inverter. I think it's getting kind of warm because we're pulling around 25 or 2600 watts, and that is 2700 watts max. So hopefully that doesn't blow up, but it might. Alrighty, we are getting down to the end of the capacity test number 2, a 0.5C capacity test. Get ready, there it goes. Yeah, the UPS was really starting to stink, but it powered through. All right, next thing we're gonna do is the temperature protection. And what I'll do is I'll just pull off each one of these little temperature probes and hit it with the can of air. And then I will also hit it with a heater to make sure it shuts off. So let me turn on the UPS so we can create a draw, and we'll make sure it shuts off. All right, so here's one. All right, so this is cell number 1, or temperature probe 1. All right, so we'll go ahead and hit it with the cold temperature. Make sure she shuts off. There we go. All right, so it did shut off. I didn't get to see what temperature it was, but it did disconnect, so that's great. Do I want to test all 4? I guess we might as well since I'm here. All right, next temperature probe. There it goes. Next one. Last one on the cells. Last one works. Next test, what we'll do is the heat check. All right, cuts off for heat as well. So there is 2 temperature protection sensors on the BMS somewhere. I'm not exactly sure where those are at, so I can't technically test that. But we could try it real quick and see what happens. I'm not gonna do it for the cold, I'll just do it for the heat. All right, so it looks like the temperature protection works as advertised for the hot and the cold. Now we did see the temperatures rise on those 2 other sensors, but I didn't want to keep the heat gun in there for too much longer. All right, so the next thing I think we're going to do is we're going to take the battery over to my 12,000 watt grow watt split phase inverter and hook it up to that. We at least want to hook up the communication and make sure it communicates correctly. And to do that, we're going to be using the supplied Ethernet cable. All right. It's actually the next day and I'm running my house off of this battery right now. Reason it took so long is I was trying a bunch of different settings with the manufacturer from CAN and the RS485. Anyway, the best settings for my inverter is you hook up to the RS485 port on the battery. On the bottom of the inverter, you connect to the BMS port. And on the computer, right over here, is where you change the inverter protocol. I think the original, what it was set on, was probably the pylon CAN, and I changed mine to grow watt 485. Once you do that, it'll automatically save it for you. I'm not going to do it now because I don't want it to kind of reset. All right, so here's some of the settings that I've been trying on the inverter and on the battery. So the settings on the left are on the inverter, the settings on the right are on the battery. All right, so what I'm using right now is L0151, and on the battery I'm using grow watt 485. The reason I found that to be the best is I was able to get the maximum charging amps. At least right now mine went to 95. If I use L02 on the inverter and pylon 485 on the battery, I can only charge at 5 amps. I'm not sure why. Maybe it's something that I'm doing wrong, or maybe it's just my specific inverter. If I try L5151 and then grow watt can on the battery, I get an error. Same for L5251 on the inverter, pylon can, I get an error. So what I found is if you use L0151 on the inverter and grow watt 485 on the battery, you can charge at a higher rate. All right, so that's the best one for me, and I'll show you that on the inverter right now. All right, so up here on the inverter, I'll show you where to change the settings. So to get in there, we're gonna long press the enter button. We're gonna scroll up to option 5. All right, option 5, this is your battery type. We're gonna change that to L1, or you would change it to L1 or Li. To do that, you press enter, and then you can scroll through those. All right, once you have Li selected, you press enter one more time, and that allows you to change the protocol, to match the BMS. All right, so right now I'm using L0151. If you find that your inverter, takes a different one, you just press enter and then put in whatever number right over here. And that's pretty much it. Once you have your number in there, you press enter to save it, and then you can back out. So one of the good things about having a battery that can communicate with an inverter is you can have it switch back over to grid or back over to battery based on percentage and not voltage. Percentage is a little bit more accurate. So for example, for my inverter, option 12 is basically a dead battery. If I want the battery to switch back over to grid whenever the battery is dead, you'd set that here. Right now the default is set on 40%. I would probably change it to 20%. So basically whenever the battery reaches 20% state of charge, it'll automatically switch back over to grid if that option is available. If we go up to option 13, this is the other end. So whenever I at least hit 80% state of charge, the inverter will automatically switch me back off grid. And what I was talking about earlier is option 2. This is my maximum charging amps. Whenever I first hooked this up, I saw this at 95 amps. And that was whenever the battery is around 50% state of charge. And once it was full charge, it would either go to 1 amp or 23 amps. So this number does change right here. And if we go back to the home screen, you can see right here, the battery is 90% state of charge. If I was going just off of battery voltage, I wouldn't actually know the state of charge. Boom, there you go. Everything tested and everything works as advertised. Actually, the only thing I couldn't test was the max current draw, and that's basically because the UPS that I'm using, I just can't draw enough to do that. However, the max current draw and see if the BMS shuts off, at 130 amps or whatever it is, that's gonna have to be in the next video. One other thing I forgot to do earlier in the video was the low temperature disconnect while charging, since that's a little more important than doing it while you're discharging. I did do it. It does disconnect at -5°C, which is good. So if you're in one of those cold climate places like I am, and you have it in the garage or a shed, it'll work as it's supposed to and disconnect so you can't, ruin the battery. Alrighty, so my thoughts on the battery, I'm not gonna beat around the bush anymore, is I think this is a fantastic battery. And I really don't have many complaints. So we'll go over the pros and cons or complaints. First thing is the pros. Shipping and packaging, good. Looks and appearance, good. Build quality, good. Operational test, good. The manual that comes with the battery, good. And finally, the price, good. Next one is the cons or complaints. And my first one is the cells are not balanced. Even though I think there's kind of like a misconception about batteries not being balanced in a brand new battery. My thoughts on that is we don't know how long this battery sits at the warehouse. Every single cell is technically made the same. However, you can't make two things alike. Every single battery is gonna have small differences, tolerances, etc. So I think that's gonna be the main reason why really every single battery that you get, they're not going to be balanced. It's going to take a couple of charges and discharge cycles to get them balanced, which I did actually do with this battery. So it's kind of a con/complaint, but I get it. Next one is the inverter connectivity. Yes, it does have that. The tricky part is finding the correct protocol to use for your inverter. The first time I connected it, I used the wrong protocol and I was only able to charge at 2 amps. I thought it was something that I was doing wrong, but what I learned is every protocol, has a whole different set of parameters. So if you use the correct protocol, then you're able to charge at a higher rate. Another thing I hear about batteries like this, or pre-built batteries, is DIY is always cheaper. And I'm not gonna disagree with you there. DIY is always cheaper. However, there's a lot of people out there that don't DIY or don't have time to DIY, don't even have the know-how to do a DIY battery. Pre-built batteries with a 10-year warranty that you just kind of slap on the wall and call it done, I find amazing. The price of batteries now compared to, 5-6 years ago is huge. Much cheaper. And the fact that this one hangs on the wall, I personally like a lot better. It's off the ground, it's neat and tidy and out of the way. One of the other questions you might ask yourself is, what is this battery even good for? The list is going to be huge, but a few off the top of my head is if you have a small off-grid cabin, you could use something like this. Portable power, and one really important one for me is keeping the lights and stuff on when there's like blackouts and stuff like that, or there's a storm running in, knocks the power out. You can use a battery like this, and you can conserve energy and not run the stove or dryer or air conditioning, which you wouldn't be able to do with this battery anyway. You can run your entire house, which would include 2 refrigerators, a bunch of lights, and have the TV on. You could do that for around 5 to 6 hours. All right, so if you have frequent power outages, this battery is perfect for you. All right, well, I think I'm gonna end the video here because I could just talk and talk. If anybody's interested in this battery and it's a perfect match for your build, remember they are having a sale from October 25th to November 5th. Price for each one is gonna be $1,580 with free shipping in the United States. That's a few $100s off. If you're watching this video and you missed out on the sale, that's okay. They did give me a couple of 10% off coupons. First one is 10% off. There's only a couple of these. It's Joe 10. Once those are gone, you can only get 5% off with discount code Joe. As always, the discount codes and affiliate links, they're not required, but they're always appreciated because I do get a small kickback for that, which helps support the YouTube channel and help me create these awesome videos. I'd love to hear your questions, comments, and concerns. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe, or smash the like button, and I'll see you on the next one. All right, so we're about, you going somewhere? You going somewhere? I didn't think so.